The Temple of Angkor Wat is one of hundreds of temples that make up the Angkor World Heritage Site. Angkor was once the largest city on Earth.
The Angkor Wat temple has been seen by millions of people and studied for centuries. But a recent discovery is now helping historians and archaeologists better understand.
The most celebrated temple in history was hiding its darkest secret beneath the ground? What if the beauty everyone admires was built on something no one wants to talk about? For almost 900 years, Angkor Wat has stood as a symbol of human achievement and devotion.
Cambodia's Angkor Wat is not just one of the largest religious monuments in Southeast Asia, but one of the largest anywhere in the world.
Millions have walked its corridors, admired its towers, and marveled at its carvings. But beneath the stone floors, something has been sealed away, something that the builders never wanted discovered. Recently, archaeologists broke through a hidden entrance and descended into a chamber that had been closed since the temple was built. What they found inside has shocked the world and forced us to see Angkor Wat in a completely different light. Stay with us as we reveal what was hidden in the depths and why this discovery is rewriting history. A monument that defied all limits. In the 12th century, deep in the jungles of Southeast Asia, the Khmer Empire built something that still seems impossible. Angkor Wat rose from the earth as a temple so massive, so detailed, and so perfectly designed that even today engineers struggle to understand how it was done.
Angkor Wat was an engineering masterpiece. Everything the Khmer had learned over hundreds of years of temple building and engineering great water projects.
This was not just a building. It was a statement of power and faith. The rulers wanted everyone to know they stood at the center of the world, connected directly to the gods. The temple's design reflected the universe itself. The tallest tower represented Mount Meru, the sacred mountain where the gods lived. The courtyards below symbolized the layers of existence. Every staircase, every doorway, every carving reminded visitors that this place was where heaven and earth met. Around the temple, enormous water channels stretched in every direction. These weren't just for decoration. They were part of a system so advanced that it kept the city alive through every season. The channels were dug with such precision that they still hold water after centuries of floods and droughts. To the people who worshipped here, the water represented the cosmic ocean that separated mortals from the divine. To the builders, it proved their mastery over nature. Inside the walls, the stone came alive with stories. Thousands of figures were carved into the sandstone dancers, warriors, gods, demons, and creatures from legend. Long panels stretched across entire corridors, showing battles and tales from ancient scripture.
This epic battle scene illustrates the pantheon of 21 Hindu gods battling alongside human warriors. Led by Vishnu, the gods of good defeat the evil gods.
The number of carvings was overwhelming. Each one seemed to declare that the Khmer Empire would last forever. How they accomplished this with simple tools remains a mystery. The temple was built in a jungle where heat, disease, and floods made survival difficult. Yet the Khmer not only survived, they thrived. They created water systems, grew enough food to feed hundreds of thousands, and raised a city that became the largest in the medieval world. But beneath all this greatness, whispers began to spread. Locals spoke of spaces under the ground that should never be opened. They told stories of chambers sealed during construction, places where something dangerous had been left behind. For generations, these stories were dismissed as superstition, until modern technology proved they were right, all along. The man who saw it first. In 1860, a French naturalist named Henri Mouhot set out into the Cambodian jungle. He wasn't hunting for ancient ruins. His goal was to collect rare plants and insects for study. But the jungle was brutal. The heat pressed down on him like a weight. The ground turned into thick mud that swallowed his steps. Insects attacked in swarms, and every day brought new dangers. Then, After days of struggling through the trees, he saw something that stopped him cold. Rising above the jungle were massive stone towers, covered in carvings so detailed they looked almost alive. Muhot pushed forward, cutting through the vines that had wrapped around the walls. There, half swallowed by the forest, stood Angkor Wat. He later wrote in his journal that this temple surpassed anything he had seen in Europe. He compared it to the greatest monuments of Rome and Greece, and suggested it might even be greater. His words stunned readers back home, who couldn't imagine such beauty hidden in the middle of the jungle. But as Muho explored deeper, he began to notice things that disturbed him. Some corridors seemed to lead nowhere, ending suddenly in blank stone walls. Other passages looked as though they had been deliberately blocked. In places, the stonework appeared purposely sealed, as if the builders wanted to hide something. In his notes, Muho admitted to feeling uneasy. He described the temple as majestic, but also strangely guarded, as if it didn't want outsiders looking too closely. He left Cambodia with more questions than answers, but his reports brought Angkor Wat back to the world's attention. His observations also planted a seed of doubt. If parts of the temple had been sealed on purpose, what were the builders trying to hide? Those who followed Muho into the jungle would soon report the same strange details, and slowly, the idea took hold that Angkor Wat was keeping secrets beneath its stones. Stories the locals refused to forget. For years, the people living near Angkor Wat noticed things that outsiders ignored. Farmers working the rice fields around the temple said their tools sometimes struck the ground and produced a hollow sound. In certain spots, footsteps seemed to echo, as if there were empty spaces below. Some villagers avoided these areas completely, warning their children never to work there. Monks at nearby temples added their own cautions. They spoke of places within the temple grounds that felt wrong, where visitors would suddenly feel uncomfortable without knowing why. They advised people not to linger in these spots, saying that disturbing them could bring bad fortune. French surveyors who mapped the area in the late 19th century recorded strange findings. Their notes mentioned uneven ground near the temple's western entrance and depressions that looked like collapsed tunnels. Some reports even suggested that certain walls hid blocked doorways. But not all of these observations appeared in the official records. Whether this was due to poor storage or something more deliberate, no one knows for sure. Workers who dug near the temple told their own stories. Some fell sick for no clear reason. Others claimed their tools broke too easily, as if the stone resisted their work. Lanterns would flicker and die in certain areas, even when the air was still. These incidents became part of local folklore, told with both fear and respect. Explorers occasionally found sealed doorways carved with images of serpent guardians. In Cambodian tradition, these serpents protect the underworld and sacred waters. To find them guarding a blocked entrance suggested that what lay beyond was never meant to be opened. Tales of curses passed from one generation to the next. According to local belief, anyone who forced open the sealed places would face punishment. Crops would fail, floods would come, disease would spread. Outsiders dismissed these as superstitions, but the stories never went away. For decades, scholars ignored these warnings. But when modern technology finally revealed what lay beneath Angkor Wat, the old stories no longer sounded like myths. They sounded like warnings that had been ignored for far too long. The sky revealed what the ground had hidden. By the 1990s, archaeologists had access to a technology that changed everything. It was called LIDAR, and it worked by firing laser pulses from an aircraft down through the jungle.
LiDAR works in a similar way to radar. It scans the ground by sending out 1 million laser points every 4 seconds and analyzing the information reflected back.
By measuring how long it took for the light to bounce back, scientists could create a digital map that stripped away all the trees and showed the bare ground. When they used LIDAR over Angkor, the results were stunning. Suddenly, a massive city appeared on their screens. Roads stretched for kilometers in perfectly straight lines. Water channels formed a complex network that showed incredible planning. Huge reservoirs came into view, each large enough to supply water to entire neighborhoods. Around Angkor Wat itself, dozens of smaller temples and settlements emerged from the jungle. The discovery forced historians to completely rethink what they knew. Angkor wasn't just a temple. It was the center of one of the largest cities in the pre-modern world, covering an area bigger than modern Paris. The Khmer had built a metropolis in one of the harshest environments on Earth, and they had done it with nothing but human labor and careful planning. But the LiDAR scans also revealed something far stranger. Directly beneath Angkor Wat, there were geometric shapes that shouldn't have been there. These were rectangular voids, too regular to be natural. They were perfectly aligned with the temple's foundations, and their symmetry suggested deliberate construction. Archaeologists debated what they might be. Some thought they were small ritual spaces where offerings were placed to bless the structure. But the voids were too large for that explanation. They looked more like sealed chambers, built for a purpose no one could explain. What troubled researchers most was not just their existence, but the fact that they had remained hidden for so long. Only when modern technology looked down from the sky did these spaces finally come into view. The next step was clear. They needed to probe the ground directly, using radar to see what the stone was hiding, and what they found would prove far more disturbing than anyone expected. Signals that couldn't be ignored. The team focused their radar scans on two key areas: the Western Causeway, which served as the main entrance, and the Central Sanctuary, the holiest part of the temple. They needed to know if the voids were natural formations or something built on purpose. The radar images left no doubt. Instead of solid earth, the scans showed hollow spaces stretching beneath the temple. Some appeared to be narrow corridors. Others looked like large sealed chambers. What surprised the researchers most was how the underground structures were reinforced. The radar suggested these spaces were built with denser stone than the buildings above them, as if the builders wanted them to survive no matter what. The size of the voids was also unusual. Typical ritual deposits were small and shallow, just large enough to hold a few symbolic items. These spaces were different. Some stretched like underground halls, long and wide enough to hold many people. Their scale and their secrecy suggested a purpose that went far beyond simple offerings. On the ground, the work wasn't easy. Teams reported unexpected collapses when digging near certain sections, even when the stone above looked stable. Some of the radar equipment failed without clear cause, forcing delays. Workers claimed they found faint carvings near blocked passages that resembled warning symbols, though whether these were intentional or just worn decorations was unclear. Several local laborers refused to continue. They said the sealed chambers were cursed, older than the temple itself. Rumors spread that anyone who tried to break into the spaces would suffer consequences. While the archaeologists dismissed these fears, the tension on site was real. Still, curiosity won out. The scale of the underground structures and the effort taken to hide them suggested something important had been concealed. After weeks of careful work, the outline of a hidden corridor finally became clear. An entrance had been found, and what waited beyond it would prove unlike anything they had ever seen. Into the sealed darkness. The entrance was hidden beneath thick roots and collapsed stone, as if the jungle itself had been trying to keep it buried. Clearing it was slow and dangerous. Every piece had to be removed carefully because centuries of weight pressed against the blocked passage. When the last stones were finally pried away, the workers stepped back in silence. Behind them was a narrow opening that sloped downward into complete darkness. The first steps inside were cautious. The corridor was tight, forcing the team to move in single file. The walls showed clear signs of being sealed by hand long ago. Hardened material filled the seams, and parts of the stone surface bore marks from tools used centuries earlier. This was no natural crack. It was a passage deliberately built and deliberately hidden. The air hit them immediately. Several archaeologists later described it as thick and foul, the kind of stale air that hadn't moved in hundreds of years. Some felt a strong sense of dread they couldn't explain. Others became lightheaded, as if the atmosphere itself resisted their presence. Protective masks were distributed, but even with them, the feeling of unease only grew. Their lights revealed details that made the team even more uncomfortable. The walls were carved with images of serpents devouring human figures. In Cambodian tradition, these serpents are guardians, but here, the carvings suggested something more threatening. Some researchers believed they symbolized sacrifice or punishment. One archaeologist remarked that it felt less like protection and more like a warning carved into stone. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The silence pressed down on them, broken only by the scrape of boots on stone and the faint sound of equipment. The corridor twisted and then dropped more steeply, as if designed to pull visitors away from the world above. Several workers later admitted they considered turning back, but the pressure to continue was too strong. Finally, at the end of the sloping passage, they came to a massive stone door. It was unlike anything else in the temple. The seams were packed with hardened material that looked as if it was designed to last forever. The door had no visible handle or hinges, only faint markings on its surface. Some workers thought they looked like protective symbols. Others believed they were curses meant to keep intruders out. It took hours of careful work to break the seal. When the door finally shifted, a rush of stale air poured out, carrying with it the weight of centuries. The team had opened what had been hidden for nearly 900 years. Inside, the truth revealed itself in a way no one had expected. The chamber that changed everything. What they found inside was not treasure. It was not an empty room. The floor was covered with bones. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of skeletal remains were arranged in deliberate patterns around a central stone altar. Some formed rough circles. Others had their heads all facing inward, as if the altar was the focus of their deaths. The arrangement didn't look like burials of honor. It looked like the aftermath of ritual killing. Several skeletons were found with wrists and ankles bound. Others had fractured skulls and deep cuts across ribs and spines. Specialists who examined the remains said these were signs of execution. These people hadn't died by accident or disease. They had been restrained, killed, and placed with purpose. On the altar stood several bronze vessels. At first, they looked ordinary, tarnished by time. But residue clung inside them. Samples were collected and sent for testing. Early results pointed to dried blood. What made researchers uneasy was that the residue contained both animal and human traces mixed together. Some experts believed these vessels were used in sacrificial rituals to bless the temple's foundations. The walls deepened the horror. Faded inscriptions in Sanskrit and ancient Khmer were still visible. They weren't decorative, they were warnings. One phrase appeared repeatedly: "The blood beneath sustains the gods. Break this chamber, and their hunger will return." Scholars noted that such writing wasn't meant for outsiders, but as reminders for priests and workers to never disturb the sealed space. The atmosphere quickly became overwhelming. Several archaeologists wept at the sight. Others refused to stay in the room for long, convinced the space carried something that resisted their presence. Workers muttered that this was the curse locals had warned about for generations. Tensions spread among the team. Some urged secrecy, arguing the find was too dangerous to reveal. Others insisted it had to be documented, no matter how disturbing, fearing that concealing the truth could unleash even darker consequences beyond anyone's control. The discovery carried enormous weight. For centuries, Angkor Wat had been celebrated as a monument to devotion and architectural brilliance. Tourists and scholars saw it as a symbol of human achievement. But this chamber suggested something far darker. If these bones truly came from sacrificial victims, then Angkor Wat wasn't just a temple. It was a monument built on blood. The questions that followed were urgent. Were these killings a single event tied to the temple's consecration? Or were they repeated rituals carried out to preserve the king's power? Did the Khmer rulers believe their empire could only survive through human sacrifice? No clear answers exist, but the evidence speaks for itself. The temple's glory was inseparable from violence. Beneath the carvings and towers, blood was its true foundation. And now, the history of Angkor Wat must be told with this truth at its center. The discovery beneath Angkor Wat has opened a door we can never close. What was once seen as a symbol of devotion is now understood as something far more complex and disturbing. The beauty remains, but so does the blood that was spilled to create it. History is rarely as simple as we want it to be, and sometimes the truth hidden beneath the surface changes everything we thought we knew. If this story left you wondering what other mysteries lie buried beneath the world's most celebrated monuments, then make sure to like this video and subscribe for more revelations that challenge everything you thought was true. Hit the bell icon so you never miss the next untold story. Because the past is filled with secrets, some buried under stone, some erased from records, and others still waiting to be discovered. Every ruin, every monument, every forgotten carving might be hiding a truth powerful enough to rewrite history. Stay curious, because we've only just begun uncovering the shadows that time tried to silence.